I am not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV, radio, or the internet. Any advice given on this broadcast is purely for entertainment and research purposes only. Use at your own risk. This video complies with YouTube guidelines for science and education. Please enjoy the program. The Not So Secret Sauce Podcast.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to the Not So Secret Sauce Podcast. I'm your host, Marvelous Matt. And today we're going to talk about the missing link in everybody's steroid cycle. But first, I'm going to make you wait on that. But first, I want to talk about esters. I've been getting a lot of questions lately about different esters of compounds and what exactly an ester is. So, this podcast is for the beginners, the people just starting out, the people that, don't have all the knowledge and are, scrolling around trying to figure stuff out. So esters are basically, they're the scientific thing, and this is a little difficult for me because I'm basically trying to simplify organic chemistry. So esters can get really complicated, really scientific, really fast. So I've tried to simplify it as much as I can. So you have testosterone, and you have these other compounds, and they all have an ester chain attached to them. We refer to that as, when we talk about testosterone solution, testosterone propionate, cypionate, enanthate, decanoate, undecanoate. There are literally hundreds of esters out there. For our bodybuilding purposes, we kind of use around a dozen of them. Basically what they do, in the shortest, simplest terms possible, they make it so that your body takes more time for that base substance, that base compound, to enter your bloodstream. So when you're talking, we're going to use, for the purpose of talking about this, we're going to use testosterone, but this applies to any compound, any ester chain attached to them. When we inject a compound into our body, in all reality, it could enter our bloodstream in as little as 20 minutes. Depending on the amount of body fat around where we inject it, the amount of blood flow in which muscle we inject it. But if you took testosterone solution, which is basically testosterone, a sterilant, and something to actually dissolve the testosterone into the water. They basically use a bacteriostatic water to dissolve the testosterone. You can inject that intramuscularly, and it will be in your bloodstream in 20 to 30 minutes. Your body's going to use it, and then it's done. It's over. You get this spike of testosterone, and then it drops. I don't like suspensions, but I'll get to that in a minute. Adding an ester chain to it basically makes it lipophilic, which is the fancy term for saying that now it likes oil, it behaves like a fat, it does not like water. Our bodies are 70-ish% water. Our blood is primarily water. Blood is what carries everything through our bodies. It's also what breaks down everything that gets into our bloodstream. Basically, when you add an ester to a compound, you're taking this testosterone molecule and you're putting armor around it that has to be broken down before that testosterone can enter your bloodstream. They do this with carbon chain molecules. So propionate, for example, I think has 3 carbon molecules attached to it. So there's not a lot of armor. Then you get into like enanthate or cypionate, which I believe has 9 of these carbon chain molecules attached to it. That's a lot thicker armor. Takes a lot more time for the water to dissolve it. Think of it as packaging. It's basically packaging that your main compound is wrapped inside. So when you inject whatever compound you're using, it takes time for your blood to break through that packaging, through that armor, to actually get to the testosterone so that it can enter your bloodstream. Also, you put this all in a depot, so not all of that is available to your bloodstream at the same time. So, it doesn't, like, just because this molecule is entering the bloodstream doesn't mean that this one is entering the bloodstream. This one may not even have been touched yet. That's where we get, the longer half-lives from. It takes longer to break it down, which means it also takes longer to get to the entire depot injection to enter your bloodstream. I find it super awesome, and it's really cool that the pharmaceutical industry has been able to make this, has been able to figure this stuff out. It basically has found a way to time release any substance, any compound that we put into our body. And it makes it so that, you don't have to inject as often. And that's really cool. It makes it to where you get these nice peaks, and then instead of this immediate drop off, it's a gradual decline as the compound is, that those carbon molecules are eaten away, the packaging is eaten away, and it can get to the base compound. Now, scientifically, the compound does not change based on the ester. So the testosterone in test prop is the same exact testosterone that's in test sip, and that is the same exact testosterone that is in undecanoate. It's just the carbon chain that changes. Now, we can't talk about esters without touching on ester weight. The problem with doing this is when we add those carbon chains to a compound, it takes part of the compound to attach them. So, for example, propionate is about 13% of the ester weight. So if you have 100 milligrams of testosterone, what you actually have is 87 milligrams of testosterone and 13 milligrams of propionate ester. Cypionate, I believe, is around 26 to 30. I've seen both. So I just kind of, for the ease of math, I'm going to go with 30%. So 100 milligrams of cypionate, you actually have 70 milligrams of testosterone and 30 milligrams of cypionate. So it does change the overall amount of the compound that is available based on the ester that you use. Now, that being said, don't lose any sleep over it. Do not lose any sleep over the ester weight of a compound. What's up, Roger? Ester weights, they make a difference, but we're talking a minuscule difference here. It's not going to be the end of the world if you're taking, if there's a 5 or 10% difference. We're not we as beginners are not taking such outrageous amounts that it's going to be this big deal. And to be honest, most people don't worry about it. It's literally, it's not worth doing, you know. I find it really hard to believe that if 5 milligrams of testosterone per week is making or breaking your cycle, if 5 milligrams of testosterone is making or breaking your physique, then you have a lot of other things you need to worry about first. You know, I've seen people get really complicated with it. You know, like, well, you have to, adjust the dosages to compensate for the ester weight. Yeah, if you want to get that technical and you're that good at math, you go for it. But personally, if I have a client and they want to take 400 milligrams a week of testosterone, I give two shits if it's 400 milligrams of propionate or 400 milligrams of cypionate. In the long run, it's not going to make that big a difference. I'm not going to sit there and tell them, well, you actually need to take 417 milligrams of cypionate to equal 400 milligrams of propionate. Nobody cares. It's not worth it. Now, the main reason I don't like suspensions is my whole goal in this is to do this as safely as possible. There's no such thing as a safe steroid. All we can do is mitigate risk and mitigate, health damages. It's more risk assessment and risk mitigation than it is safety. So when you take any water-based steroid compound, now I'm not talking about HCG, I'm not talking about human growth hormone, I'm talking about actual anabolic androgenic steroids that come in a water base. One, I don't like the huge peak and the immediate drop-off of anything that's going to aromatize. So test suspension, it's going to get in your system. Your aromatase enzyme is still going to convert part of that into estrogen. So a peak in testosterone is going to be a peak in estrogen, period, end of story. I don't like high peaks and then quick drop-offs. I like nice, steady. There's going to be peaks and valleys. There's no way to avoid that. But I don't like here, 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 here. I prefer just a nice little, nice little wave. That's how you mitigate risk, and that's how you navigate the side effects that come along with usage. And suspensions do away with that. Now, the second reason I don't like suspensions is when you're talking about like an oral suspension, like a Winstrol injection or a D-ball injection or something like that. That stuff has a lot of solvent in it. You're talking about an insane amount of post-injection pain. It's more solvent than it is compound. And I don't need to be injecting that, if you're going to take an oral, take an oral. If you can't take orals because they mess with your digestion or, they do things like that, then I guess technically, but most of the time that falls more on less the compound and more the binding agents. And there's a lot of UGLs out there that will sell you the unbound powder that you can dose out. You will need, a small milligram scale and stuff like that to do it. It is more cumbersome than just, popping a pill. It's actually an experiment that I'm going to run if I ever decide to run orals again. I'm going to try to just use the unbound powder and see if that affects my digestion. So we will see. But yeah, esters, really simply, they determine how long it takes for your body to break down a compound in your system. The longer the carbon chain, the longer it takes. That also means that it takes longer to get the buildup in your system. A lot of people will use we call them fast acting or short ester or slow acting long ester compounds. A lot of people like to use, the short esters, so that they're in and out of your system. We all know how I feel about trenbolone. I do not like it. Do not think there's ever a reason to run it unless you are stepping on a IFBB pro stage. Even at the state level, there's no reason to run Tren. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. But if you were to run it, I always suggest that you run the acetate version because it's in and out of your system a whole lot quicker than the enanthate. Same thing goes with testosterone. If you, for some reason, are being tested and you want to run, I guess if you're on a TRT regimen and you've got to have a blood test done and you want to risk, running as long as you can, run the propionate, type thing. Me personally, I don't like to inject that often, so I usually run cypionate or enanthate. As far as I'm concerned, they're interchangeable. For 99.9% of us, they are interchangeable. Because I only want to have to pin twice a week. I'm not doing every other day. I'm not doing every day. I don't like to stick myself with a needle that often. I do it because I have to. I do it because I medically need TRT. But even if I was to get on a cycle, again, I'm not changing my injection protocol. So anything I use would be long ester. But yeah, that's esters in a nutshell. Hey, the ester is the nutshell. So, real quick housekeeping, guys. Don't forget, like, share, comment, subscribe. If you find value in anything that I say, give me a like, give me a share. The comments help boost us in the algorithms. Ask questions on there for the next show. I record this every 2 weeks, and ring the bell. The subscribe button really helps boost us up in the algorithms. And if you're finding value in what I'm doing, help other people find value in what you're doing. And what I'm doing. Use what you're doing to help people find value in what I'm doing. There we go. Something like that. So yeah. So now what you've all been waiting for. The missing link in your steroid cycle. So any of us that have ever ran gear, we all know that there's usually just something missing, something that could, take our physiques to the next level. If I could just find this one compound, everything would just fall into place. Well, I do a lot of research. Like, some people watch TV, some people listen to other podcasts. I research. I read more research papers, and not just on gear, not just on PEDs, not just stuff related to the anabolic brotherhood. I just love research studies. And I came across a few, and a lot of research studies reference other research studies. And when you combine them all, it's called a meta study. And I actually found a couple of meta studies that all kind of came to the same conclusion about this one thing that just takes everything to the next level. All right. And there's some buildup, but grab a pen and a piece of paper. I'll give you a second. You're going to want to write this down. Okay. And it may shock some of you. Okay. Are you ready? The missing link in almost everybody's cycle. It is, okay. Now, bear in mind, this is super rare. So it's a little, I don't want to say it's difficult to find, because I was able to find it. I have more connections than most of the people in the anabolic brotherhood, but I was able to find it, but it's also really inexpensive. All right. All right. Enough with the suspense. All right. Are you ready? It's intensity. There is no magic compound. There is no magic steroid that is just going to all of a sudden transform your physique and make you look like Ronnie Coleman. It doesn't exist. You're not going to just, hey, all I need to do to get my physique exactly where I want it is add 10 IU a day of growth hormone. Nope, that's not going to work. Could it help? Maybe. But then you're not going to get there, and you're going to look for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And it all boils down to your intensity in your training. If you are not pushing yourself, if you are not overloading yourself, you are never going to get where you want to be. It's estimated that 20% of men either are currently on AAS, are currently members of the Anabolic Brotherhood, or have been in the past 3 years. It is a safe assumption, we've talked about this before, it is a safe assumption that if you look around the gym, those odds increase. If you're going to be taking the steroids, you're going to be going to the gym. So let's just say 20% is 1 in 5. Let's just say that now we can say 1 in 3 of the guys in your gym are on gear. Look around your gym. Does every third guy look like he's on gear? I promise you they don't. Where I live, I have, I wish I could say that I have a nice home gym set up. I really don't. Back during the pandemic, we got a pretty decent setup, power rack, bench, things like that. But it wasn't, it was enough. But I belong to 5 different commercial gyms in my area. Part of it for the training, part of it because I don't like crowds. I hate training in a crowd. Part of it's inspiration. You know, I belong to the local Golds, and there's there's more people I would consider bodybuilders at the Golds than any other gym I go to. But even there, 1 out of 3 guys do not look like they are on gear. Now, what do all of these guys have in common? You see them walk over to the squat rack, and yeah, they're repping out 135, but they've been repping out 135 for the past 5 years. They're not trying to overload. They're not trying to get stronger. They're not trying to make the reps more difficult. There's no intensity to their training. We as a community have gotten lazy. Do you think Arnold trained with 3 reps in reserve? Do you think that Ronnie Coleman didn't push himself to the max every time he walked into the gym? Do you think Phil Heath just took some gear and got where he's at? No. Yes, they have amazing genetics. You can look at a lot of pro bodybuilders and you can put a lot off on genetics. But how are you going to know what your genetics are going to do if you're not pushing your genetics? If there's no intensity to your training, if you are not progressively overloading, making every rep more difficult. And that doesn't mean you have to add weight. That does not mean you have to add weight. Making a set take 10 seconds longer. Adding that time under tension. Adding forced reps, drop sets, widow makers. There are ways to increase intensity without necessarily having to increase weight. But how much of that are you actually doing? I promise you, if you walked into the gym and you said, I'm going to give it 110% today. Let's say you're doing chest. You've been repping 205. You know, you can do 205 for 12 reps. You get 12 reps, you're done. Why are you not doing 13? I guarantee you, You go in there, you start adding that intensity to your workouts. It will do more for you than adding another compound ever will. And sorry, I get a little animated with this because this is something that I am actually very passionate about. I am not a huge guy. Depending on what gym I walk into, there are some gyms I walk into and I am the biggest guy there, and that is sad. I don't even break 200 pounds. I should never be the biggest guy in a gym. Ever. It's not my goal to be the biggest guy in the gym. But I should never be that guy. And I walk into the gym sometimes. I travel a lot, whether it be for work or for pleasure. One of my favorite things to do when we travel, and my wife has gotten used to this, and she even helps me at this point. I'm going to find somewhere to train because I want to train in a gym I've never trained in before. Earlier this summer, we were down at damn, I should know where we were at because it was actually a party for our anniversary that her cousin threw for us down on the banks of the Potomac. But I forget the name of the neighborhood that it's in. It's in the right off the Potomac in Virginia. But anyway, there was a gym that was on the beach 4 blocks from the Airbnb that we stayed in. Now, you best believe Sunday morning when I woke up, my ass went down there and got a day pass. And I loved it. I love training in a gym I've never been in before. I've got friends all over the country. And as soon as a few things get settled out and travel, I've got more time to travel, I plan on going and visiting friends just to go train with them in their home gym. I say their home gym, their gym that they train in, not necessarily in their home, just to go train with these guys. I absolutely love doing that. But no matter where I go, I look around the gym and the intensity is just not there. When I walk into a gym, if I walk in to do a leg workout, I am going to murder my legs. Now, there is a lot to be said for our goal is to stimulate, not annihilate. I can still walk out of that gym. My legs are not going to give out on me. But I know that I worked them because I put the intensity into every rep. Like I was saying, if you go into the gym and you've been repping 205, 12 reps, why are you not going for 13? Why are you not throwing another 5 pounds on that bar? Put a biscuit on each end. And if that means you only get 8 reps, then you only get 8 reps, but you did a heavier weight. When you get that up to 12 reps, if you don't feel safe increasing that weight, start timing your sets. Okay, that set took me 30 seconds. I'm going to make it take 35 seconds because I'm going to add a second to every negative. It will make more difference doing that than it ever will adding another compound. Gear can only help if the stimulus is there to promote growth. Our bodies adapt, and when you feed it the same thing over and over, the same stimulus over and over, it adapts to that stimulus and you stop growing. So then you have to up the intensity, up the overload, whether it be more weight, more time under tension, slower negatives. You know, like I said, drop sets. There's so many intensity modifiers out there that are at your disposal. And they will make a much bigger difference than adding another 100 milligrams of test. And they're actually going to make you healthier as opposed to hurting you by adding more compounds, more possible side effects. You get along, let's say you get along great on 500 mgs of test, and all of a sudden, you know, you're plateauing and you're like, well, I just need to add another 250 milligrams. I'm just going to add another cc a week. Okay. Or you could add 2 pounds to your bench and 5 pounds to your squat and 5 pounds to your deadlift and work yourself back up to a 12 to 15 rep range and do it again and break that plateau. It's not always about the drugs. Sometimes it's about what you need to do to make it happen. If it was the drugs, then out of those 1 in 5 guys that are on gear, when you look around, you would know who was on gear. We can look at a lot of pro bodybuilders and say they got there because of the drugs, but you cannot deny how hard they train, period. I don't care how you can literally pump anabolics into somebody nonstop. You could have the best medical team there. Is a novice user going to make some small gains? Yes, they are, because gear itself is a novel stimulus. But once their body gets used to that, it's done. It's over. This is why guys, when they start TRT, they actually notice some body recomposition, is because now they've got elevated testosterone. They are burning more fat. Their bodies are burning more calories. But the ones that see the biggest change are the ones that go and hit the gym and actually do something. Anybody can walk around here. We got one guy, he's actually a lawyer. I know he's a lawyer because I actually used him to file my first divorce, my only divorce. He looks exactly the same today as he did 10 years ago when I got divorced. I actually think he looks worse. I mean, he is 10 years older, but this guy is in the gym for 3 hours a day, every day. But he's working this muscle, that jaw muscle, instead of one of these muscles. Just because you're in the gym doesn't mean, the gym doesn't work by osmosis. You have to put in the work. So if you want to know what the missing link in your cycle is, what is going to get you over that plateau, is going to be that extra 5% effort. That little bit more. Adding that extra second to each negative on every rep, every single rep. Find a way to make the exercise harder. Find a way to make it, I hesitate to say hurt more, maybe burn more would be more along our lines, because I don't want anybody to get hurt. I'm not telling you to go in the gym and start trying to curl 80-pound dumbbells, okay? There are limits to what you can do safely, but that's when you start adding your intensity modifiers. That's when you start adding in, slower negatives and drop sets. I love drop sets. I absolutely love drop sets. Nothing, especially for arms, nothing makes my arms burn like a nice drop set. I love a nice drop set of skull crushers. Oh, yeah. You think you're a badass. When you got to squeeze that last rep out, or you're gonna drop that bar on your head. Yeah. Especially after you've done 2 sets and you're on that third immediate set with that lighter weight, and it feels heavier than that first set did with the heavier weight. That's a stimulus right there. That's intensity. Just turn it up a little bit. I'm not saying you got to go balls to the wall, but this stuff of leaving, 3 reps in reserve, 5 reps in reserve. You should never lift more than 70% of your 1 rep max. You should never do 1 rep max unless you're a power lifter. Bullshit. If you are trying to build muscle, you should find out what your 1 rep max is at least once every 6 to 8 weeks. Because you should be in the gym to get stronger. And if you get stronger, that 1 rep max is going to change. So now if you're going to do a rep range with 70% of your 1 rep max, how do you know what your current 1 rep max is if you haven't tested it in 2 years? Do you see what I'm saying? Are the gears turning? I know some of y'all probably have smoke coming out of your ears right now. I'm sure I've annoyed quite a few of you, and I'm sure I've hit some nerves. Good. anything in this life worth changing comes from a place of pain. You may think that, I've been curling 35s for, I've been curling 35-pound dumbbells for a year, and, I can't do the 40s. Okay. Then find a way to add 1 pound to that dumbbell. They make 1 pound sticky weights. Get them on Amazon. Or, like I said, time yourself. There's ways to do it. So I know some of y'all are going to be annoyed about the clickbait title on this. You came here looking for that one magic compound. There is no magic compound. It doesn't exist. And I promise you that if you put half as much effort into training hard as you put into trying to find out, this convoluted cycle of, well, if I take this, then I'm going to, it'll give me my dream physique. If you put half as much effort into your training as you do trying to figure that out, I promise you, you will see the results. All right, I'm going to step down off my soapbox now. So, all right, let's do some questions. All right. Jeremy asks, during a cycle, is it necessary to take anti-estro or anti-aromatizers, even if no side effects are coming on? It is never necessary to take anti-estrogen or anti-aromatizing agents. You don't ever have to. Is it convenient? Does it help with side effects? Yes. The simple answer to your question is no. If there's no side effects, don't do it. It's not worth it. We do require a certain amount of estrogen to function, and estrogen actually helps you gain muscle. So unless you're getting the water retention, the itchy, sensitive nipples, the super emotional sides that come along with high estrogen, no, there's no need. As a matter of fact, I tell all of my clients, have AIs on hand, but do not take them unless absolutely necessary. Crashing your estrogen makes you feel like shit. I actually can't stand when I see someone recommend a cycle. Not saying I'm on this cycle and I take this much AI, but somebody recommending a cycle and saying, and you need to take this much AI. I don't need to take any AI. I'm on doctor-prescribed TRT at 300 milligrams a week of test sip, and I need no AIs. As a matter of fact, I'm on so much prescription because my body doesn't like to aromatize or do the 5-alpha reductase to DHT. At 300 milligrams a week, my estrogen is just on the low end of normal. Based off that and extrapolating, and all right, I'm going to just come out and say it. I've had blood tests done when I was on 800 milligrams a week, and my estrogen was not much higher. I was still in the normal range. That's me. You may take 500 milligrams a week, and your estrogen goes through the roof. We're all different. In a perfect world, you would get a blood test done, see where your estrogen's at, mid-cycle, see how you're aromatizing, what those levels would be for you, and use your adjust your estrogen control accordingly. You should always have estrogen control on hand because gyno can come on. It's not an instantaneous thing, but it's also not something that once it starts, you want to take lightly. It's not like oh my God, my estrogen's high, I'm going to wake up with boobs. No, that's not how it works. There are stages to it. It takes time for gyno and stuff like that. Even the water retention. If you're on tests and you notice that you're retaining a lot of water, then maybe take a little AI, but we don't want to crash our estrogen. Now, I do not prescribe to the camp of you never need to take an AI. You should just let your estrogen do whatever the hell it wants to do. No. Back in the day, it was all about keeping estrogen as low as possible. Now the pendulum has swung to the other side, and you have people that are all about just let it run wild. One thing I've learned over the years is the pendulum swings both ways. When it's in the middle is about where you want to be. And that really breaks down to it being person independent and what works for you. My brother-in-law, 300 milligrams of testosterone a week, and he's taking a milligram of Adex twice a week to keep his estrogen in control. But he has the blood tests. That's what he needs to keep it in control. So there's actually been times where he's ran out, and my particular TRT provider, it requires a prescription to Arimidex with the TRT. So I literally have bottles of Arimidex sitting around that, they don't do any good to me. So, all right. This one's fun. I've actually been waiting. It actually surprises me that it took this many episodes for this to come up. Why is it called the Not So Secret Sauce Podcast? James, it's simple. Society wants to act like steroids are this big, guarded secret. And in a way they are, but in a way they're not. You can pretty much look at somebody and know if they are using. Now, what I mean by that is knowing what I know, there is no way that some, I'm not going to say all, but there's a good amount of celebrities out there, they want to act like it's some big secret. For years, professional bodybuilders acted like it was some big secret. Their secret sauce to their physiques. Well, it's not so secret. Here in Western culture, it's kind of, I don't want to say shamed, but it is looked down on. In a lot of countries, it's not. There are countries on this planet that you can literally walk into a pharmacy, pick up a bottle of test off the shelf, walk up to the counter and buy it. There are countries where they'll let you buy it, but they have to administer it right then and there. There are countries where you can walk into a pharmacy and they will have genotropin human growth hormone pens sitting in a cooler, behind the counter, like some places have sodas. But here in the Western world, North America specifically, the United States, Canada, they want to act like it's some kind of big-ass secret. It's not a secret. Now, what is a secret is digging through all the bro science, anecdotal BS, all the misinformation, the myths. I've answered the question on here, but I still get asked on a regular basis when somebody finds out that I know about PEDs. They first off, because I know about them, they assume I'm on them. I haven't been on a cycle in years. They also will ask me questions, and like I actually had a training client at the gym, at one of my gyms the other day, that, he asked me, he said that, he was getting older and we were talking about TRT, and he said, well, I kind of always thought, maybe I'd like to try, steroids. And I looked at him, I was like, oh, gear? And he just got this surprised look on his face. And I'm just like, dude, I run a podcast about this. It's like, I'll talk to you, whatever you want to know. I was like, it's included in your training. So, we can talk. And first question he asks, doesn't that shrink your pecker? And at this point, I can't help but laugh when people ask a question like that, because I've heard it so many times that it's just become, it's such a standardized myth that I just shake my head and laugh when I hear about it now, because no, in no way, shape, or form does normal AAS use shrink the size of your penis, period. End of story. It makes your balls shrink. It will atrophy your testicles and they will shrink. but it does not shrink your actual member. The running joke is actually that if your balls shrink, the rest looks bigger. So, take that for what you will. I just realized when I hold my head like this, the picture of my wife in the background makes it look like there's cat ears. I'm going to have to move that. I can't have cat ears. No. I've also got to get a new set of headphones. These things kill my ears after about 20 minutes. So, but yeah, it's called the Not So Secret Sauce Podcast because I'm actually trying to make it to where it is not so secret. I think one of the worst things that has ever been done to users is the vilification of steroid users. We should not be looked down on because we want to take advantage of available pharmaceuticals to enhance our physiques. I mean, we don't look down on women when they go and get their boobs done. We don't look down on overweight people when they go get gastric bypass surgery. So, I mean, Botox is injecting poison into your body, literal poison into your body, and nobody bats an eye about that. It may not be for you, and that's fine. Steroids aren't for everybody. But there should not be this whole big stigma around it. It should not be something spoken about in hushed whispers in locker rooms. I should be able to have a conversation on the gym floor with my training partner about the cycle he's running without people looking at us like we're some kind of degenerates because we're part of the anabolic brotherhood. It's that simple. So, yeah, it shouldn't be a secret. All right. Let's see here. Housekeeping. Gonna throw it back up. I really want more subscribers. And if a lot of y'all are in bodybuilding related groups on Facebook and message boards and stuff like that. If somebody asks a question and you feel that I answered it, feel free to throw my video up in a comment to their question. Let them watch it and judge for themselves. I can't do that because a lot of these places don't allow self-promotion, but I belong to a little over 300 groups that, cater to us users. And I've got a handful that let me post in there, when I'm recording and stuff like that. But for the most part, no self-promotion. So, yeah. All right. Using Mast P now as a makeshift AI. It's good for that. Never used Mast E before. Would I retain more water using the longer ester, or would it still give me that drier look? Well, Roger, there's bro science debate about this. So scientifically, like I said earlier, the only difference between Mast P and Mast E is the carbon chains attached to it. Once those carbon chains are dissolved, it's the same compound going into your bloodstream. So no, there should not be a difference. Now, as far as using it for a makeshift AI, you may run into a difference on that. Part of what Mast does to give you that drier, harder look is reduce estrogen. So it reduces the water retention you get from estrogen. Now, switching from P to E, if you're currently taking it, would be fine because you already have some Masteron in your system. But just starting out with Mast E, let's say, next cycle you're going to switch. It's going to take longer to kick in because it's going to take longer to dissolve those carbon chains and for that longer ester to actually get into your bloodstream. So it will also take longer for it to get out of your bloodstream at the end of your cycle. So there may be a little bit of difference right there until it reaches full song because, depending on which testosterone you use, the rate at which you aromatize, when the Masteron kicks in, et cetera, it could take a little bit longer to balance out. But over a 12 to 16 week cycle, no, I don't think there would be much noticeable difference. Now, there are some people that argue that the ester chain changes the side effects and effects of a compound. I think that has more to do with dosing than anything else. And most people like to cite Tren Ace versus Tren Enanthate. Say, well, I can take Tren Ace and not get as many side effects, or I don't get this side effect or that side effect. I think a lot of that has to do with those peaks and valleys. Anytime you take a shorter ester, those peaks and valleys are not as pronounced. Take a longer ester, the peaks and valleys are more pronounced. Now, trenbolone is one hell of a drug. It is known for its side effects. So saying I can take, 500 or that's a ridiculous amount, 300 milligrams of Tren Ace a week and not get these side effects, but I take 300 milligrams of Tren E and I get these side effects. Okay, well, first off, if you're on Ace, you're probably injecting every other day. If you're on E, you're probably injecting twice a week at most. So you've got a lot bigger peak, a lot bigger valley, and more time in between of them. I see the side effects coming from that. But scientifically, like I said, it's the same exact compound. I don't understand how the androgen receptors on our cells know the difference between an ester when the ester is gone when the compound enters the receptor. Does that make any sense? It's like, when we inject it, it's encapsulated in that ester. When it gets to the androgen receptor on our actual cells, that carbon chain is gone. The ester carbon chain does not exist. What is free floating through your body that attaches to your cell is the same compound. So how your body would know the difference doesn't make sense to me. So me personally, short ester versus long ester, my deciding factor on that is injection frequency. I always base a cycle off of test. Roger, if you're in here, comment and let me know if you're running a test base. Let me know if what ester your testosterone is. But I run my esters together. So if I was running a test prop and injecting every other day, then I would use Mast prop because I'm already doing the injection. All right, so you're running prop. Okay, see, since you're running prop, I would run Mast prop too, because then you could just put them in the same barrel and do the same injection. You don't benefit anything. You actually don't benefit a least frequent injection protocol by going to the Mast E. Now, if you just can't find any Mast P and you want to use Mast E, it's not going to hurt anything. But if I'm running propionate, if I'm running a short estered test, I'm going to run short estered everything else. If I'm running a longer ester test, then I'm going to run any of my auxiliary compounds. I'm going to run those longer ester too. But yeah, as far as the water retention, no issue. Okay, there we go. Was thinking test sip at a later cycle. When you change over to a test sip, then you could change to a Mast E. That way you're still on the same injection protocol and put them together in the same barrel, inject at the same time, save yourself from having to pin as often. Like I said, you're going to have that little bit of time at the beginning of the cycle that, you may get a little bit more water while the Masteron is starting to work. But the nice thing is that you may actually not do that because you're using a cypionate ester testosterone. That level is going to build at the same rate as the mast level builds. So any water retention that would come from the conversion would also be, you'd also have the masteron in your system at the same rate to help, offset it. So yeah, there's no reason to not run it. I tell people all the time, run what you like to run. Just because I'm against trenbolone does not mean I don't have clients that use it. Let's see, run 3 days even with long esters. I'd still think that I would, if I was running a longer ester test, I'd run the longer ester mass. Just because, like I said, it's going to build in your system at the same rate as the test. That way, as you're aromatizing, you have the masteron in your system at that same concentration and same rate to help offset that. I actually think what would end up happening if you tried, I'm going to have to ask around and see if anybody's done this, because I actually don't know off the top of my head if anybody has, but I would think that if you were running a longer ester test with a short ester masteron, you could run the risk of crashing your estrogen, because the testosterone would take time to break down and aromatize, whereas the masteron has already broken down and would actually start crashing your estrogen before the testosterone could convert. There are people smarter than me that I'm going to have to ask this, because I want to know. But yeah, Roger, if you're just looking for stability, for me, I would, if you're running short ester test, run short ester mast. If you're running long ester test, run long ester mast. They're practically the same ester. It just makes sense to me to have them break down at the same rate and your body use them at the same rate. So, but yeah, that's it. That's all I've got for today, guys. I appreciate y'all listening to me rant today. I really do enjoy doing this. It's a lot of fun. I've met a lot of nice people, met a few more members of the Anabolic Brotherhood and all of that. And now this particular topic wasn't the one that I was planning on doing today. Oh, go for it, Roger. I got time. I got all day. No, I really enjoy doing this, and I just, like I said, I just ask that if y'all find value in what I do, find me on YouTube, find me on, if you listen to me on, we're also available on Apple Podcasts. We're available on Spotify. Leave us 5-star reviews there. Posted it last minute. I won't be able to put it on the screen, but let me see if I can find it real quick. All right. I'm not going to be able to put this on the screen, Roger, but I'll read it off. Oh, wait. No, that's not it. Okay, there we go. That'll work. Getting flu symptoms day of. A lot of inflammation all over. Test P, NPP, Mast P. So more than likely what you are getting, we call test flu. It is usually a reaction to the solvents and the carrier oil. And it's called test flu, but you can get it from any compound. Just like Tren cough is not actually subjected just to Tren. You can get Tren cough from anything. Basically, either your body is disagreeing with the solvents or the carrier oil that is in one of your compounds. And it might be all of your compounds. It could be the fact of the total load from all those compounds combined, the amount of solvents and stuff like that in there. You know how when people get flu shots, they say, well, I'm not getting a flu shot because I always feel like shit for 2 or 3 days afterwards. We attribute the majority of that to the fact that you've just injected a dead virus into your body. But part of that is the sterilants, the carriers, and everything in the vaccine. You can have that kind of reaction to it. But yeah, it's basically, we call that test flu. And give me a second here. I've actually got a paper that I read the other day. Why are you not coming up? I believe it's the solvents myself had heat some of. Did they crash? Or did it just oh, it's your higher dose bottles. Yep. See, your higher dose bottles, you have to use a lot of solvents in higher dose stuff. That is one of the things that I spoke about on a previous podcast is that, the more heat can only dissolve so much. It's like if you're boiling, let's say you're making rock candy. We all know you make rock candy by boiling water, putting sugar in, and then, letting it solidify on a string or a stick. You can only dilute so much sugar in a given volume of water. Heating it helps it do more, but it's still only going to hold so much. Even if it's boiling, it may double it, but it's still only going to hold so much. So, same thing happens when you use higher doses of compounds in a given milliliter of oil. The only way to make that work and keep it in suspension, because that's the thing, when a UGL makes this stuff, they have to keep it in suspension. Nobody's going to buy it if it's constantly crashing. There was actually a big to-do a couple of years ago, and I'm not going to name the lab, but it was a national well-known lab that ran into some issues where they were overdosing their test. Specifically, it was a Namphate 300. They were actually overdosing it. And they wanted to do it, for the purest of intentions. They just wanted to make sure that their customers were getting their money's worth. But they didn't use enough solvent to keep it in solution, and it ended up almost ruining them because it was crashing so easy. Like, if you did not keep it at above 72 degrees, it would crash every time. And people were ordering this stuff 10, 12 vials at a time. And it's springtime in the US, and it's showing up, every bottle's crashed. And it's like, that's not good. Now, there's nothing wrong with crashed gear. Give me 1 second, Roger. There's nothing wrong with crashed gear. You can heat it up 90% of the time. You can just heat it up, shake it up, and it's good to go. But if it's crashing at just normal temperatures, in that around 70 degree mark, about the temperature that we all keep it in our house, between 65 and 75, if it's crashing just sitting in a cabinet somewhere, then yeah, it doesn't have enough solvent in it, or they tried to overdose it. But yeah, just chances are it's probably the solvents. Any food, drinks, or compounds that aren't harsh that could cut down on the inflammation. Turmeric is exactly what I was going to suggest. The other thing that you could possibly do, I've heard of people doing this, and I've actually done it before, but I did it for a different reason. I used to have some Test 500 that gave me horrible PIP and post-injection pain. And I actually just got some grapeseed oil and cut it. It does reduce the, actually, no. Well, Well, yeah, I mean, it would reduce the amount of solvents per milliliter, but to do this, you'd still get the same amount of solvents. You'd just be injecting more oil. So, yeah, for your situation, that wouldn't work. But turmeric, zinc is actually a good anti-inflammatory. It's not listed as one, but I've read numerous studies that 50 milligrams a day of zinc, plus it has many other health benefits. But turmeric is the biggest one for inflammation. Me personally, and people don't like it when I say this, but I kind of make it a point to be open and honest. Me personally, I'm going to get some lower dosed gear. If I feel like shit, I can't train. Same reason I don't take nandrolone in any way, shape, or form. If I feel like shit, I can't train. If I can't train, I can't grow. Just like if I can't eat, I can't grow. So me personally, if I come across a compound that just does not agree with me, I'm gonna switch compounds. If that means that I have to inject a little more often, then I'm going to inject a little more often to get the same milligrams. So, but yeah, let me find this paper real quick. Oh, thank you, Johnny. And yeah, I agree. For me, I'm not gonna lie. I love the way I feel on Deca, but I just I love the way I look on Deca. I love the way that my joints feel. I love the joint lubrication. It was actually part of my TRT protocol for a little while, but I just it destroys my stomach. Not like my appetite. It literally makes me nauseous, and I can't train. I can't eat. I can't do anything. So to me, it's not worth it to take it. Um, yes. Okay. All right. So yeah, I so this is why I wanted to find this paper. And it's anecdotal. Sometimes I'm lucky enough to come across stuff where they actually interview people. Um, so you're using short ester compounds, and this is what I wanted to double check: is test flu is actually more common anecdotally. This is all anecdotally, okay? But test flu is actually more common with short ester compounds. Um, it's unknown why, but it basically causes your something about the way that the ester gets broke down. It makes it your body starts treating one of the compounds like a foreign entity, like a virus. So the symptoms that you're feeling are actually the natural symptoms of your body trying to fight off a virus. So basically, it's your body attacking. Yes, basically, you're getting the inflammation from both sides. You're getting in. Yeah, I'm willing to bet that if your next cycle you switch over to I'm willing to bet if your next cycle you switch over to long esters, you will definitely see a reduction in that, and it'll make a big difference. And if not, everything we do is experimenting, So it could be one of those that it could be. There's multiple causes that could be causing it. Switching to long esters may make it completely go away. It may make it to where it's manageable. You won't know until you try. You're obviously, an experienced user, so experiment a little bit, I do want to put this one up real quick. Nandrolone makes me big and strong as hell, and I feel fine. Tren, I get every side. There are so many people out there that get the horrendous side effects of Tren, but it's become so normalized that you have to have Tren, and that's not something anyone will ever convince me of. Tren is the devil. Nothing that good comes without an equal amount of bad. And while Tren is one of the strongest muscle building compounds that exists, you're not going to get that without side effects. Period. End of story. So, keep up the good work, because, I catch a lot of flack, but I can honestly say that every client I actually had last story, and then this thing's running long. I actually had a client that literally knew nothing about steroids, did not know anything about testosterone, any of that. All he knew was that he had seen on TikTok that if you want to get big and strong, you got to run Tren. I literally had to look at this guy and, I hate to use this term, I had to re-educate him on what steroids are, what they do, et cetera, and explain to him why he should not use Tren forever, let alone for a first cycle. And he tried to argue with me because of TikTok videos that literally had no explanation for anything. Just, they were literally 20 and 30-second clips. He showed me a few of them, 20 and 30-second clips of teenagers talking about being on the Tren. And I'm just sitting here, I'm just like, oh my God. I actually wanted to see if I could find these guys and go back and send them my interview with Ryan Reed and show them why they are destroying their bodies. But, couldn't do it. It just, Tren is the devil. One day I'm going to do a whole episode just on Tren. So, but guys, thank y'all for listening to me ramble and, sitting here. I know we went a little long, but, sometimes I get a little animated and, I love doing this.